The single most important currency on the internet is eyeballs. How many people are looking at your content? Not only in the sense that people looking at it, if you have, say, ad revenue on a YouTube video, then the amount of views you get directly correlates to how much money you make. But also, resharing means that you can spread to new fans. If you have, say, a Patreon, the more people who are aware of you, the more money you're going to make on that Patreon. So one of the most important ways that people on the internet are able to proliferate their content in order to gain those views and to make a career is through sharing, through making content that not only appeals to people but makes them want to share it with others. Now the problem with this is that people don't tend to share content based on how interesting it is or how good it is in and of itself. They share it based on identity politics. People share stuff that reflects themselves, or that they want to reflect themselves. They share things that they can say, this is also how I feel. This is also the way that I perceive things. And what this creates is an environment in which the things that get shared are either things which reflect a very specific worldview, or which are as innocuous as possible, that don't reflect any particular worldview. And it goes beyond just like political ideas. Sometimes people won't share something. Let's say there was a review of a movie that at some point mentioned some kind of right-wing political viewpoint. Regardless of whether or not you agree with everything else in the video, you might hesitate to share that if you are a liberal, because you don't want people to think that you agree with that part of the video. Even if you don't post it saying, I agree with everything in this, or something like that. You know, there's always that concern that people are going to associate you with everything presented within the video you send. But even beyond politics, let's say this video right here. Big ass anime poster in the background. Not just an anime poster, but for a polarizing show, K-On! There's a lot of people who might agree with everything I say in this video and wouldn't reshare it because I'm in a room full of anime stuff and they don't want to be associated with anime stuff. Or they're an anime fan, but they don't want to be associated with K-On! These are always things to be concerned about. This is why, for a long time, I didn't do these kinds of vlogs on this channel, because I just thought I'm going to be hamstringing every point I make by filming it on a backdrop of anime crap, which is probably true. I just don't care anymore. I don't care how many views these videos get, but I'm definitely damaging the shareability of this just by having that stuff going on in the background. And this becomes a real problem, I think, in just a lot of cases where lots of interesting stuff people won't accept because it doesn't reflect their identity politics. Now, personally, I don't really associate myself with any kind of political group or faction. I have political opinions, which are represented in my videos, but none of them is reflective of a greater ideology, at least any of the ones that, you know, people talk about all the time. You'll notice I don't present myself as a liberal or conservative, or as a social justice guy, or a red pill guy, or anything like that. I've had accusations of those before, but in every different direction. But always, it's minimal, because I don't bring that stuff up a lot. But the funny thing about it is that I follow creators who are all of those things, who make really interesting videos sometimes from those viewpoints. And it's difficult for me to reshare them because I don't want people to start perceiving me as being aligned with those political ideologies. Like, I'm a big fan of Innuendo Studios, who is a pretty blatantly SJW guy who does games analysis, often from a staunchly feminist perspective, or H-Bomber guy, who makes anti-feminist videos, and they're hilarious. And both of those guys, I don't agree with their ideologies, at least not to the extreme extent that they kind of take them, but I think that the things they say are interesting and are worth thinking about, and that there's stuff worth considering from those ideologies. But if I share those videos, which when I did my top 10 analysis videos of 2015, I got a lot of shit for including Innuendo Studios video series on Gamergate from people who were like insulted that I would even speak of such a thing, you know, and they were calling me an SJW and stuff. I was like, it's not about whether or not I agree with the videos. They're really interesting and have lots of interesting points in them. You know, you don't have to take all of it at face value and agree with everything just to appreciate what's cool about a video. On the flip side of the coin, I follow Monkey Jones, who has a lot of like right-wing philosophy or is just generally politically nihilistic. Most of his stuff is satire, but even with the satire, I'm afraid to post it because what if people don't recognize the satire? Or if they think that making jokes about those things is inherently wrong. You know, a lot of people, like, just the mere way that he phrases things would be, you know, offensive to some. And then they're going to associate that with me, just because I posted it. Or Rageaholic, who's a sort of libertarian / right-wing, that kind of guy, made a really interesting video about the wall that Trump wants to build in defense of the wall. I don't necessarily think the wall should be built, but his video was really fucking interesting and made lots of interesting points about why it should. Would I reshare that video knowing that people are going to take it as I want the wall, you know, because I reshared this video? And I consider this obviously a problem. And I really hate that I find myself embroiled in it just because I so don't want to be associated with these political ideologies that I'm afraid to even share interesting, valuable content just because it happens to align with those. And I think there's a lot of people who have really suffered for this. I think this has always been a huge part of why my good friend Endless Jess has always struggled to have his stuff get reshared, because of the fact that he presents lots of political opinions in his videos that don't align with any ideology. And he's said how over time he's constantly had, like, conservatives and liberals each accuse him of being too much of the other one. And he just doesn't, he's not either one. You know, he says some things that may align with one or the other. But because he's not in a conveniently selected ideology that people can just identify themselves with immediately and reshare it to other like-minded individuals, it makes it harder to share his stuff. It's harder to send a video out to your friends, even if it's just about like some cool movie, if there's maybe a joke in there that's a little off color and you're afraid your friends will think that you also feel that way, you know? Even if it's a joke, even if it's just like totally offhand, a lot of people don't like that kind of joke. A lot of people take that kind of joke as politicized in itself. So, you know, I just wish everybody would calm down about this shit, and that resharing something didn't automatically make it a reflection on you and your beliefs and who you are as a person, you know? There's plenty of interesting stuff that, like, I really have to stand there and go, like, I want to share this. I want people to know this is cool, but I can't control how they're going to go about, you know, interpreting it. Unless I fucking, every time I want to reshare something, I package it with an entire paragraph of explanation about why I think it's interesting or what parts of it I do or don't agree with. You know, I have to write a whole fucking analysis of my interpretation of every video that I reshare, you know. I mean, which is essentially what I'm doing in my actual analysis videos. When I say something like, I love Girlish Number, that's a political statement in terms of anime fandom and taste, where people who have their own idea of what that show is do not approve of someone liking it. And then I have to go through and analyze why I would feel this way about this thing to try to maybe justify myself for just liking a thing, you know, that to some people suggests a lack of taste or intelligence or something like that to appreciate. And then, of course, people who reshare that video, you know, some of them are going to have difficulty resharing it because it's a video about a cute girls show. Now, granted that because the way that my videos are presented is specifically to explain why I have this ideology, my videos do get shared a lot from people who don't agree with me. And people will say it all the time. Like, one of the most common comments that I see with my videos when they get shared is, I don't agree with everything he's saying, but this is interesting the way he's presenting it. Because in my videos I say, hey, I don't expect you to agree with this, but here's my perspective, you know. So I have to have that level of clarification just to even make it so my videos can be shared. Because when I do come out just fully swinging about a show and just presenting, you know, my side without that kind of invitation, then, you know, some people will, it becomes more contentious, essentially. But I wish it wasn't the case. I wish people could reshare things because it's interesting, not because they agree with it, without having to constantly qualify, I don't agree with everything in this video. And then that others would, you know, watch it and not just assume something about you based on what you've shared, you know. But then the reason that it happens is that people are just so eager to promote their ideologies and to promote their self-image that they constantly want to reshare stuff that reflects how they see themselves. They want to craft their identity through what they share. And so, you know, people will be over eager to share things that agree with their ideology, and as a result, it just turns everyone into an ideologue. When I'm on Twitter, you know, most of what I see getting reshared is just people trying to, you know, present their political ideas through everyone else who's talking about it. And because that stuff's so easy to share, more and more of it gets made, which is why we have more and more and more of these pundits on the internet, more and more people who are just trying to promote some political ideology growing ever more successful. The aforementioned H-Bomber guy, that dude makes like $3,000 something a video on Patreon, and he's got less than 70,000 subscribers. And the reason for that is that his videos, for the people who watch them, are a part of their identity. He's basically justifying this political ideology, the people who are, you know, who are feminists who are sick of anti-feminists, essentially, because he's making fun of them and doing it in a clever way that really feels like it justifies the ideology to these people. And there's so much value in that, in being able to promote their identity politics, that they will not only eagerly reshare his videos, but they will also eagerly pay for them, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of incentive to chase the identity politics bandwagon. But then there's other guys who, you know, refuse to adhere to one ideology, and they struggle because of it, because people won't reshare their videos because they're afraid of what it'll say about them. It's a real shame, and I don't even know how to fix it, honestly, other than to just tell people, like, hey, you don't assume that just because I reshare a fucking satirical Mumkey Jones video just because I think it's funny, that I agree with everything in it. But then again, the mere fact that I think it's funny probably says something about me to a lot of people. You know, the fact that I'm willing to laugh at this thing that a lot of people think shouldn't be joked about is enough to make it political, which is why it's hard for me to share a Mumkey Jones video, you know, even the ones I'm in. There are lots of podcasts and stuff and like videos I've done with people over the years that I like will, you know, maybe retweet but not mention in a public video, just because I don't want people to start associating the things presented in that podcast with my main channel, you know, and start looking at me as a political guy or something, or as friends with political guys. You know, it's just a pain in the ass, and it can affect the way that you're able to get out there. Yeah, I guess that's it that I had to say about that.